Hey, welcome to another morning coffee with Trevor. I'm your host, Trevor Matthews, and I want to thank everyone once again for joining me on each morning so far. It's been a lot of fun. I'm still learning so much and having a lot of fun with it. I Over the last week or two, I've been really focusing on my processes, my planning, and this has really been helping me organize myself. Right, getting up 5 o'clock was not always easy for me to get up, especially the last month or two when I got out of my routine of getting up at 5 a.m. And it's harder to get back into those routine. It's always good to have good habits, and it's easy to fall out of a habit than get into a habit. And I think this morning coffees with Trevor has been really helping me focus on, sharing my knowledge, giving back. And I really appreciate everyone taking their time this early in the morning to come out and have a chat with me. So good morning, everyone. How you doing, George and Victor and Dee?
Good morning, Trevor.
How you doing? You're in Aruba, right, Victor?
Yes, I'm in Aruba.
How's it there this morning?
Well, it's really warm.
Really warm. It's the opposite here. It's really cold.
Yeah, I know this.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for joining again. I really appreciate it. So today, I think we'll get into a few different topics. I think we talked about compressors for the last 5 or 6 days. Just high level overview of compressors, but we'll probably get into condensers. But like I was mentioning a little bit earlier, I'm starting to get more focused. This morning coffee with Trevor's been really helping me out, planning my day, structuring my day. And I really believe as a technician in the field, that's something that definitely didn't do. I wasn't planning out my day because I'm like, well, I could get a call and I could go anywheres. And I think planning out your day the night before, even the weekend before, is so important. And you can get calls and go anywhere like that. You can get a call and a service call and you have to go somewhere else and it may take you off the kind of track. But I really believe if you plan your days out and structure your days, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to get things done. I was on a podcast on the weekend with a gentleman named Joshua Rees, and really smart guy, technician. That's what we're talking about is when we first started out, we weren't really planning and scheduling ourselves. And now when we plan and schedule our days, it makes it so much easier. And I even noticed when I was in the field planning my day, because I always like to exercise. I always like to work out. So that was something I always planned when I was a technician. So even if I was out of town, I would bring my workout gear with me, or if I was traveling. And here in Canada, we have YMCAs and there's gyms all across the country. So you could really pop into any one. So I would always bring my gym gear and work out. So planning your days is so important. Another big thing we talked about on the weekend on the podcast is about health. Like I was not, as a technician, there was many, many years where I wasn't taking care of my health. I was eating burgers every day. I was not making lunches. I was working those 12, 14, 16 hours a day. But I was not taking care of my health side. There was after work, lots and lots of beers, lots of greasy foods, and it definitely affects you, so planning your days are super important, especially as a technician. And over time, you don't do it overnight. You can't just all of a sudden change your whole life overnight, but it's small, simple steps, like Jim Quick says. So thanks for joining, Donald. Yeah, so we're going to get into, I think, condensers today. I think that's probably the next step from the compressors. Condensers is something that I'm still learning about. There's new designs of condensers coming out, like micro channels, and that's not new, but in the refrigeration side, it is quite new. And I hear different opinions. People like them, they hate them, and you need to. Myself personally, I haven't worked on any. Well, one I think on a Daikin, but it's not really. I can't really say I've been working on microchannel condensers, but what you need to understand is what's happening in the condenser and why that's happening. So the condenser, it rejects the heat. It really wants to take the ambient air, if it's an air-cooled condenser, and pull that air through, and then start to get droplets out of that the refrigerant vapor, and what you need at the outlet of that condenser is like a full column or a liquid seal, whatever you want to call it, going down the liquid line, the drop leg, the condensing leg, whatever you want to call it. You want high pressure, high temperature liquid leaving there. Unless you have a subcooler circuit in that condenser. So maybe it wouldn't be like high temperature, it'd probably be like a cooler temperature because you want that subcooling to happen. But it's important to really understand what the process is, and staging, different types of staging condensers. You'll see this in refrigeration a lot, supermarket refrigeration. You could have fan cycling, you can have flooded valves, you can have combination of fans and flooded valves and head pressure controls. There's lots of different kinds. So you really need to understand those different components that are on your system. And over the years, it took me a long time to really start to realize that I need to study a bit more. I need to invest in myself and learn about these valves. There's so many pieces of equipment that I worked on that there was parts that I didn't really know what they did. I seen them at the big blue valve. It's a three-way valve, it has a head on it, a dome on it. Is that a headmaster? Is that an LAC, whatever it is? I've walked by so many valves when I was my first 5, 6, 7 years, and didn't really understand. And I may have, like, I forget some stuff. Maybe I don't give myself as much credit as I should when I was 6, 7 years into the industry, but I had to continue to relearn that stuff. I feel like I'm relearning a lot of the stuff that maybe I did know and I forgot along the way. Good quote by Brian Orr, but it's really important to understand how those condensers work and the components that are on it. Because if something starts to go wrong in your condenser, it's going to totally affect that whole system. And it's like really any component. You have a component that's having an issue in your system, it affects everything else. That compressor, yes, it is the heart of the system, the most expensive component that you would have to replace. But everything affects everything. And then the compressor takes the brunt of it. So when you're going and working on condensers, you need to go and check and take a look at, is it dirty? Is it clean? Is the fans running right? Is the right fans on there? Are they running backwards? Is the fan plate on backwards? Is the wires correct size? I remember one year, probably after about 6 or 7 years in, is that we did a reno on a store and we put a brand new condenser in. It was 12 fan condenser. And 6 or 8 months, maybe 9 months later, summer comes by, because we did this in the fall. And by the time the summer came by, I went up and do a maintenance, and there was like 4 or 5 of these fan motors dead. And I'm like, what, did I do something wrong? Did we do an improper install or something? I wasn't sure. And then all of a sudden, like a week or 2 later, I was talking with my service manager. They were talking with the manufacturer. And all of a sudden, there was a skid of condensing fan motors just sitting at our shop. So I went out and I changed like 4 or 5 of these condenser fan motors on this fan. And then before the end of the year, I changed another 2 or 3. And this is within 1 year. So this is a very costly issue. And I'm trying to remember if they were indoor condenser fan motors. I'm not sure the issue was, but I know they were failing. They were getting, and there was no VFDs on this. So like you could say maybe it was a VFD. They didn't have their, their ground, their grounding ring on it, but we lost all these. So that's super costly. And these are things that you wouldn't think of as a technician. You're like, okay, we just got this brand new $1 million piece of equipment or super expensive brand new equipment. Shouldn't those motors be right? So this is something you need to check, and you got to do some investigating on your own. If you start having multiple failures like that, especially on a new equipment, you got to start asking questions, not just replacing parts, asking questions. You're going to have to replace those parts, but go find out and dive in a little bit deeper, because that is going to definitely cost the customer a lot of money, a lot of your time, because you still have to go and service other customers. You still have a list of customers you're supposed to be helping out on a daily and weekly basis. And having these premature failures can, be an issue. Yes, work, it's good. It's work, and you're getting work and you're getting paid, but it's costing your company money. It costs the manufacturer money, and it costing the customer money. Hopefully that manufacturer, if it's the manufacturing issue, they're going to help the cost, but that doesn't happen all the time. So you need to, as a technician, you got to come up with solutions to help your customers. At the end of the day, you're working for your customer, and you want to get them up and running so they continue to come back and hire you for your work. You know, you build that relationship with your customer. And when you build that relationship and a strong relationship, I've seen me have solid relationship with customers, and they wanted me to come back all the time. They would call up my service manager and say, listen, we want Trevor to come back here. And that's such a great feeling. And that's by you delivering value to them, not just going changing parts and, just not explaining to them in their terms of what's going on, just passing them a bill of 20 grand or 10 grand. You got to explain that stuff, and you got to talk to them and make them feel like they understand what you're doing, they're included, and that you're providing the best value out there to them. That's good. That is really good. I like that. I love my coffees in the morning. So I've been continue to study and continue and invest in myself. I got a book right here. So this is, I've talked about this many times. Oh, I can't see it. It's hard to see. So Commercial Refrigeration for Air Conditioning Technician by Dick Wertz. And section 3, chapter 3 is all about condensers. So even me, like I've been 17 years in the industry. I got this book from Dick, and it's great. Like I'm spending time learning, still learning. Like, did I read this stuff before? Maybe, but it just, over the years, you learn something once, you learn it twice, you train on it, and then you read it again, you start to understand it at a deeper level. And that's really what I love about refrigeration now with my experience, is that when I read something, say it's on a heat pump or a CO2 system or on condensers, even though I understand how condensers work, is I understand that, like, that basic and fundamental level, but also at an advanced level. I understand the words that are on the page now, where 10 years ago, I would read some refrigeration information articles, and I'm like, what does that mean? I don't understand how that works. And this takes time, and this takes investing in yourself, learning, asking questions, reading books. But this book here talks about a lot of different stuff, superheated vapor, condensing temperatures, flash gas. Flash gas is one big thing that you really need to take care of, because if you have flash gas in that liquid line, in that drop leg, and whatever you want to call it, and you start getting flash gas to your TX valves, your metering devices, what happens? Like little bubbles, and these little bubbles start to impede in the pins inside those TX valves, depending on the TX valve itself. And what it'll do, it'll start reducing your capacity, and you'll start having erratic operations to the point where if you don't have enough, if you have way too much flash gas, you're going to start to, overheat, not keep temperature, I guess. Sorry. Not keep temperature. Anybody run into issues with flash gas in systems before?
I can't say I've run into any issues with flash gas, but I will say I love that book.
Yeah.
I have that book. I don't do much supermarket refrigeration, mostly just, restaurant equipment. But
it's perfect for restaurant equipment, right?
We have a lot of service techs that are just starting out. So I tell them to get that book, and I have it on my Kindle. So sometimes I'll go back and reference it just to double check what I'm measuring.
Yeah, and that's great. Thank you for sharing, because it's so important. Like here, 3 phases of a condenser: desuperheat. The hottest part of a system is right when you leave that compressor, right when it leaves that valve, that reed valve, disk valve, whatever it is, or the scroll, right where that last point where it's squished and it goes out that discharge valve. So then it's desuperheating all the way to the condenser. So your temperature is reducing. So the hottest part is in the compressor, but as it desuperheats, it gets to the condenser, still desuperheating in the condenser until you start getting that airflow over the coil. And then that's when the droplets start to come out of the condenser. You start to get it to condense. And And then when you get the subcooling, then hopefully by the end of there, well, you need a full column of liquid leaving there. And it doesn't matter if it's going to a receiver or if it's going straight to metering device, you need liquid going out there. And it's just really good. I like reading. Dick puts it in a great point form and easy to digest. You know, it's super easy to digest. And, you know, he got great examples of lots of, like, how to clean a coil properly. I've went to job sites where guys went and sprayed coils with chemicals, didn't wash it off properly, and it just started eating away the coils. So if you go out there and you see coils eaten away, and it's not because of chemicals, you know, if it's a chemical manufacturer nearby, or if it's near the ocean where there's a lot of salt and stuff, and they're not proper sized condensers, a lot of times it's from technicians, you know, from us spraying, like not cleaning it properly or washing it off. Then we get into like fan speed control. Setting that stuff up is so important. You know, staging those condenser fans. Should one be running all the time? Should you have a VFD or ECM fan motor? And these are the things that can be really difficult as a technician, because if you don't know where do I start? And then a lot of times I've even done it is where, oh, well, let's see if I can just get by this call and then somebody else can come and, you know, deal with it. Don't do that. I've done it before. It's not right to the next technician. And then maybe you're the only technician there. So you need to go and do some research on why something's not working. If it's a flooded valve, you know, or if it's a ORI, ORD setup, you need to understand those different valves. And if you don't know what I mean by those, go on and research what ORD is on Google right now, or ORI for head pressure control. It's important, and to take the time to learn that stuff. Also in that book is great questions. So in the condenser section, he has a ton of great questions. You know, go through the questions, and the ones that you don't know, circle those questions and ask somebody about it. Find out what their answer would be. Ask 2 or 3 people. And then if you get 2 or 3 people that have the same answer, well, that's probably the right answer. You know, and for sure, Dick's a great guy. If you shot him an email and asked him what question chapter 3, question 30 was, he would send you the answer. You know, so these are the things you need to do and really take a look at. Good morning, Joel. How you doing, brother? Okay.
I'm good, Trevor.
Good? Awesome.
Yeah, good, man.
Hey, Craig, how you doing? See a few new people joining, so I want to say hi. Yeah, so really, when you start running into condenser issues, it's going to affect your discharge pressure. You're going to start getting high compression ratio, and there's a lot of things to look for. I said a lot of them already, but you know, is it a plug condenser? And the basics is what you need to, when you're doing troubleshooting service calls, you need to go right to the basics. Because I used to jump right to the advanced, try to jump to the most advanced thing. Oh, the compressor's down, it's out of gas, this or that. You need to go assess the site, and you need to go right to the basics. I've worked on some projects where, you know, you go into a store and you're doing an energy audit, and you want to increase the energy efficiency of the store. Do you know the efficient, you know, compared to even putting variable speed drives, putting digital compressors, you know, doing all these crazy things and adding all this equipment, the most efficient for this specific store, and I shouldn't say it's not for every store, but for this specific store, was just doing the proper setup again after 18 years. Is going in, cleaning all the evaporators, cleaning the condensers, making sure all the fan blades were right, making sure the condenser's running properly, make sure all the TX valves are set to the proper superheat, make sure all the evaporator, the EPRs are set up properly, make sure the compressor staging is done all properly. And we got, I believe it was up to like 18% by just doing all the stuff that we should be doing as a maintenance PM. 18%. And I think on that, then they added digitals, variable speeds, and they were getting like great 12, 13, 14% adding these new technologies. But the highest percentage for this specific store anyway was just doing that initial recommissioning, I guess I should say, after 15 or 18 years of the store. Anybody have any experience with that?
I would say my experience is just maybe not with supermarkets, again with restaurant equipment, is no one takes the time to wash or clean the coils, evaporator coils, or condenser coils. And a lot of times when I do, I always take the time to do it. And many times I won't even ask for permission. I'll just do it. I just consider it part of the service. And I get tons of comments if a customer is not, I've not serviced that store before or that location, and I do that. Many times if I go back, they'll say it's never worked that good ever since it was brand new.
Yeah, and exactly. Chris Stevens from HVACR videos, you'll see a lot of his videos where he is doing maintenance. He's doing the proper maintenance where the other technicians just don't do it. You know, they don't take the time to pull the fans off and clean from front to back. You know, they just blow it in deeper sometimes. Oh, it looks kind of clean. It's taking the time. It does take time to do our job properly. You know, and when you have a lot of integrity, you know, you want to help your customers. You want to make sure that customer's up and running properly. It takes time, and you have to look for stuff as well. Like you need to go around and say, okay, well, this doesn't sound right. You got to listen, you got to touch, you got to feel, you got to look. And this is even before you start putting gauges and temperature probes on. If you see the condensers dirty, if you're going to do a service call, the first step is making sure everything's clean. If you see the condensers dirty, clean it. You know, because you can't go take test measurements with a dirty condenser or a dirty evaporator coil. If it's frozen up, what's it going to give you? It's going to tell you you're flooding back if the system's running. You know, because you're not boiling off any of that refrigerant. And it's important to take your time to do that. You know, condensers, I was talking to start with micro channel condensers, right? There's also, like in package units, I've worked on lots of them, they have split condensers. And I didn't even know this. I used to go and I was spraying in the package unit, just trying to clean out the condenser because all the fluff was on the outside, but I was just pushing that in deeper. Then a technician showed me, well, Trevor, you got to take this all apart, pull off the panels, pull off the sides, and split the coil down. I couldn't believe it when I looked inside. I'm like, man, I made it worse by washing it out. So these are the things you need to understand the equipment you're working on, and that's super important. But there's lots to know about each component. Condenser, we talked about it just a little bit today, but there's so many different types of style condensers. And so there's water cooled, there's air cooled with subcooling, there's micro channel, and each one of them work differently and have different amount of fans and cycling, like I talked about. And you need to understand each of them. So when you're working on them and you find them, or you're at a new customer, especially if you have a new customers, you got to assess the site. Maybe they're calling you for one specific job, but you take a half an hour and you walk around that site, even if you had to do it on your own time, because that is business for you, especially if you own your own business. That's how you bring value to your customer. Say, okay, I know I came here to work on this, but I see this condenser's starting to plug up. This evaporator's not blowing properly. And this is just by visual look. This is not putting gauges on. This is not just going around and walking around, and you write that in your service report. So like, if you want me to come back and do a site assessment, I can do that. Here's a fixed, maybe it's a fixed rate you have or whatever it is your company has, but do that for your customer. Provide higher value than they are expecting. And when you start providing higher value than they're expecting, they're going to want you to keep coming back to that store, and they're not going to mind pay the bills. They're not going to mind to sign off your service sheet. There's not going to be, you know, nobody, it doesn't matter if it's a $20 bill or a $500 bill. They're still going to be like, wow, this is a lot of money for what you did. You know what I mean? There's going to be that there. But when you start building this relationship with your customer, it's not going to matter. They're going to be like, wow, you got it up and running. This system is working better than it was before, just like George said, like, so for some of his customers. And that is going to set you apart from the other technicians out there. Well, I got to jump off here. I got another webinar in 5 minutes, but I want to thank everyone for joining me for coffee this morning, and let's get a conversation going again tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.